Less than 48 hours away from the start of the early signing period for football. It is the recruiting roundup right here on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. Travis Reier alongside, senior recruiting editor Andrew Bone down there. And of course, also site publisher Tim Watts. Guys, you've been doing this stuff for more than a combined 40 years. You're closing in on together like a half century of this stuff. And I know it's changed a lot here in recent years with the transfer portal, with NIL, but is there at least still a lot of that same intrigue or, interest certainly is still seems to be high, Tim, and all this stuff?
Yeah, for me, I love it. I mean, I know, I mean, we get a lot of questions on the round table, the BOL message board of how do we answer the same question? I mean, it's kind of just part of your daily life. I mean, you go out, you go to Publix, you go to, Books A Million, you go to a lot of places. If they recognize you, they ask a question. So you're kind of just used to it. Also, you spend so much time talking with our coworkers amongst ourselves, me and Andrew, me and Joseph, me and you, all of us talking recruiting. It just becomes, I'm probably saying these names in my sleep. You know what I mean? I'm just saying when's Ryan signing? I'm probably doing all that stuff. So yeah, to me, I love it. It's still, Christmas Eve for me.
I'm guessing the same for you, Andrew.
Yeah, back when we used to do the just the regular signing period back in February, it was always around my birthday. My birthday's on February the 3rd, so it was always like, all right, I'll celebrate afterwards, or I'm working on my birthday. It was always kind of busy around that time of the year. But man, it's certainly a lot of fun to cover it all. And finally, you get to the week and you're like, man, I can't believe it's almost over, because most of these kids are signing early. You're not really waiting around till February for 10, 15 kids to make decisions anymore. I think the first year of that early signing period, people didn't really understand it completely, and we were still waiting on guys to take official visits in January. And now everybody gets all that stuff over with. There might be one or two guys that we're watching pretty closely next month, but this is kind of the show now, and this is the culmination of the entire year. For some kids, it's been a 2 or 3 year process. So for us, it's been a 2 or 3 year process for some of those guys, but we're here at the finish line, and it's pretty exciting.
Now, you guys pretty much predicted on some previous episodes of the recruiting roundup that this previous weekend could be interesting. There could be some surprises. There could be some visitors, both unofficially and officially, of note. We certainly kept track with all of that right there with our running thread and coverage at BamaOnline.com, our roundtable, our premium message board. We were all over it. You guys were all over it. Tim, let me start with you. What was maybe the most interesting aspect of this most recent weekend, this closing weekend, really?
I always love that last weekend because you can always count on just a very few official visitors. They had all that stuff. They had bowl practice going on, playoff practice going on. You knew they'd try to sneak some guys in. They ended up with Bryce Underwood, who's the number one player in the 2025 class. Michigan kid, quarterback, number one by far, probably, of the recruits in that class, and one of the best one you've seen in the last 10 years. He's right there at that top of that list with the other guys. He came in for a visit. He's pretty interesting because he's going to commit in a couple of weeks. I think it's January 6th, maybe something like that. So LSU's involved, and Michigan's obviously involved, and that's the in-state school. So Alabama got their shot. Unexpected. We found out about it Friday night. We chased it. Andrew and I chased it for, 12, 14 hours before we got it confirmed that he was on campus. So that was a big one. And then Edric Houston was another one. Andrew, you talk about him for a minute.
Yeah, I think that the Edric Houston news was probably more surprising to our board than anything else. Tim and I had talked about Houston as a possible visitor, probably a few days prior, and we were kind of waiting to see if it was actually going to happen, because a lot of times we hear different kids are going to be coming in, and it ends up not happening. But Tim was able to confirm the visit, and obviously it was a big deal, and I think it took a lot of people by surprise. It took Ohio State by surprise that he was on campus, and he had visited Clemson on Friday as well. This is a kid that out of Buford High School in Georgia. A lot of top players from from Buford have gone to Alabama. We've seen Justice Haynes, Seth McLaughlin, of course, Isaiah Bond, Jake Pope. But this was a big target for Alabama. Back earlier this year, he committed to Ohio State in August, and Alabama was on that short list. They were, top 2, top 3 for Edric when he made that decision. Really didn't hear a ton about him during the season. Probably over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we started hearing a little bit more chatter that there was, still some conversations happening. We weren't sure if he was going to make it in for a visit, like I said, but he came in. And Alabama, at least might have a fighter's chance at this finish line. I think he's going to make a decision probably today or tomorrow and let coaches know. But there's always a surprise late in the process for Alabama as far as potential flip. Maybe somebody that comes out of nowhere. Is Edric that guy this year? Could be. I think we're ready to predict it just yet. But we still got some more phone calls to make, and figure out what's going to be happening on Wednesday.
And the thing with Houston, this is how the game's changed. Is he could sign with Ohio State, but if something happens and he decides to leave Ohio State, last school he ever visited was Alabama, right? There's been some rumors that he was worried about Larry Johnson retiring. They're really good defensive line coach. These kids aren't dumb. They know after signing day news tends to break. And if you go back to blast from the past, y'all remember Roquan Smith committed to UCLA. Remember that, Andrew? And then it leaked out his position coach was leaving and he hadn't signed yet. And he ended up at Georgia, obviously a great player. I think Travis's Jaguars played him.
He was a problem. He was a problem for my team last night.
He's a mess, isn't he? So, so now it's not just about signing them. Now it's about signing them in the future too. But I agree with Andrew. You went from no chance to a puncher's chance. So you got to like that.
Guys, what about this running back situation? Is there any more clarity there after the weekend? Alabama, it looks like, involved with at least 2 or 3 guys at the position. Do we know anything after the weekend in that regard?
Yeah, well, Joseph Hastings, our young protege, he got Kevin Riley on the phone last night where Kevin said Alabama's leading. Now, me and Andrew being vets of the game, Travis being around this game a long time, we're like, I don't know. 2 days to go. But he said, Alabama is close to home. He lives in Tuscaloosa, has said Alabama's the leader. He's committed to Miami. I think it's just best. He's got a lot of stuff to discuss, would figure out what he wants to do. Miami's heavy in the NIL game. They're not ashamed of it. So that could factor in. And they had Jaden Ball on campus, who's an interesting prospect. Daniel Hill's still lurking. Andrew can tell you all about Daniel Hill's recruiting.
Yeah, so it is going to be an interesting couple of days on the running back recruiting front because there are 2 guys that they are trying to flip, and Kevin Riley and Jaden Ball. I do think as far as Ball is concerned, he's been committed to Arkansas for a long time, but I do think it comes down to Alabama and Florida. I think there has been somewhat of some confidence on the Florida side, but I don't think that's a done deal just yet. I think it's pretty close between the Tide and the Gators. And then as far as Kevin Riley, as Tim pointed out, he's certainly a guy that Alabama has recruited for a long time, visited Tuscaloosa 3 times during the season, and told everybody that he was shutting things down 2 weeks ago, but then ends up making the trip to Tuscaloosa. And we know that Miami's not going to go away. They're going to make some pitches to him today and tomorrow, try to get him leaning back towards them, and he might be leaning towards them regardless. He might just be trying to create some drama. So we'll see what happens there. But as far as Daniel Hill is concerned, this kid out of Meridian, Mississippi, that's visited Tuscaloosa probably more than I have in the last couple of years. But he's been down there so many times, very comfortable with the program and all the surroundings. But I don't know what's going to happen with Hill. I mean, this has been an interesting recruitment to follow. He was supposed to commit back in August. South Carolina was supposedly the destination. It's been an Alabama-South Carolina battle for the last 6 months. But he took a visit to Mississippi State last weekend or 2 weekends ago with a new coaching staff. His father played there. I don't know if that's a major factor in the decision at all. His father's been pretty adamant that he would like for Daniel to go to Alabama over the last year. But be interesting to see what happens because Alabama could end up with Jaden Ball and or Kevin Riley in the next 24 hours, possibly, and then announce on signing day. And then Daniel Hill calls and says, "Hey, I want to commit." There might not be room, but I think it's all going to depend on who calls the Alabama coaching staff first and makes that decision in the next 24 to 48 hours.
I guess there's two. Go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
To answer your question, there is no clarity. We said a lot of words to say, hey, it's coming down. Jaden Ball's battling, with Florida. I'm not sure you can totally rule out Arkansas. You know what I mean? They got some things they're going to try to work there. It's been kind of quiet, but I do agree with Andrew. Bama, Florida type battle. Florida's had some optimism. You go to Kevin Riley, you got the in-state guy. Miami's a long ways from home. That's the thing about it with Miami. I've noticed people that like Miami, they love it. They're very passionate about it. They love the city. And if you don't like Miami, it's not really a place you visit. You know what I mean? It's not. So it's a long way from home from him. So he's still up in the air. And then Daniel Hill, after he signs, I won't know where he's going. I'll still be confused. So it's the most exciting part of this recruiting process, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that's another thing.
Go ahead.
And with Daniel Hill, this is a kid that is going to sign on Wednesday, but he's not going to announce until January the 6th at the All-American.
Got a couple guys like that, right? Couple of guys doing that.
Yep, him and Zay Mincy, top 100 defensive back out of Daytona Beach. He's got a top 3: Alabama, Florida, Miami, and he'll sign on Wednesday, but won't announce until the All-American Bowl as well.
But so like any secret, that's one that's really hard to keep up until that game.
I mean, I'm sure the games want that, right? I mean, that's
for sure.
A big piece of it. And, I don't know are we affiliated with any of the games now at On3? Mm-hmm. I don't think we are. Mm-hmm. I think we could do a show one day on how the two main games go about the competition for players. I'd like to maybe pick you guys.
Me and Andrew have been involved in that. I mean, you go and you get there's some politics that come into play. I mean, now look, that game has changed entirely from what I thought it was back in the day when we loved it. From Leonard Fournette and all those guys committing on the same day. You had Tony committing. You had all that drama committing. You had the game itself had good moments. It's just totally changed. I mean, it's sort of like the NFL Pro Bowl. You know what I mean? You go out there, you play. They don't have a lot of practice. A lot of these guys have spent time at the university they're going to, which we'll talk about later. So everything's changed. I still enjoy it. I watched the Alabama-Mississippi game. I thought those guys took a lot of pride in it. But overall, I mean, there's some jockeying to get the players there. There's also politics. I mean, if you're doing rankings and you got to pick the players going in the game, you can't really leave off. You can't really leave off somebody you got highly ranked, whether they deserve it or not. So there's always there's a recruiting battle in itself, but it's not like it used to be back in the day when me and Andrew were really covering it, because there was heated battle. Kids would actually flip from one game to the other. That wasn't even that long ago, and they'd get a graphic and announce it.
Yeah,
flip season. I'm going to the other game.
Speaking of flip season and all-star games, Ryan Williams again, man, at the Alabama-Mississippi game, does his thing and then follows that up with a trip to Auburn that certainly made some news. So I got to check in on you guys. I got to get a Ryan Williams temp check right now after the weekend as it relates to Alabama and maybe what you're still seeing for him in the immediate future.
Nothing's changed on my end. I mean, he went down there. I mean, he, pictures before of him shopping showed him in an Alabama hoodie. I mean, Ryan kind of is what he is. I still think people need to remember he's 16 years old. He's getting to see Bronny James play in the first row. There have been rumors LeBron was going to show up. I don't think that was ever accurate, although his wife showed up. He's probably cooler to meet than LeBron in some ways, but the James family was there. He looked like he was having fun. They were chanting, "We want Ryan." It was all orchestrated. And I remember this back in the day when Alabama did that for Tebow. Tebow was on T-shirts. It was a picture I took from the Nike camps. They were doing that whole thing. So I remember being at that level. But, I mean, on my end, nothing's changed with Ryan. I mean, he has said he's locked in. I have no reason to doubt him at this stage.
Hey, Andrew, I guess we talk about flip potential in protecting your guys like Ryan Williams. But Alabama has had to fend off a home state school, I guess, in the Florida Gators where Jameer Grimsley is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kid that committed to Alabama back in July. Grew up in a Florida fan, Florida household, which was kind of weird because Florida had been recruiting him for a long time, but he never went to a Florida football game until November. It was his
That
first.
might have helped Florida if he didn't go to an actual game.
Yeah, that's true.
Ouch.
But they were pressing hard. They really wanted to get him in their class. Billy Napier went and saw him on Friday. He took an official visit to Florida 2 weekends ago. I think Corey Raymond being let go as the defensive backs coach at UF, that probably hurt their chances even more. But he still gave them a shot. Let them provide some pitches to him, and decided to shut things completely down. We had heard over the last probably 3 or 4 days that there was really nothing to worry about there with him, but you just never know, especially when his father told Joseph on I think it was Friday afternoon that they were going to sit down as a family and make a decision over the weekend. You were just kind of waiting to hear what that was going to be, and then on Sunday night, Joseph had an interview with Jameer, who said he was shutting things down, was coming home. This is also a kid that's going to enroll early. He won't be there for bowl practice just yet. He might be able to get there for the Rose Bowl practices, in California, but he won't be there this week. As we'll see a couple other guys that are going to enroll early, but yeah, I mean, he's a guy that Alabama's really excited about.
Pretty nice for those early enrollees, right? I think they get to go back to California. The California guys that just came in, going to be going right back out to Southern California for on-site practices for the Rose Bowl. Hey, Tim, also like defensive end, outside linebacker, and you talked about this earlier with a 5-star of note, but that seems to be a position Alabama still actively recruiting, not just on the high school front, but some transfer portal guys at defensive line and maybe the edge that are still of interest, or maybe guys that Alabama is just doing their due diligence on. Who knows if they'll actually end up in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, Bama, the one, I think the one we're most interested in was Jay-Sean Ross from Missouri. He came in for an unofficial visit. He's been very quiet throughout this whole recruiting process. Haven't really got to know him that well. It's just been quiet. And I mean, nobody has really talked about him, but Fast Riser is a senior. I think he played wide receiver out of position last year, moved to a new school. You see him off that edge. He's the flash guy, shredded type of guy, came up for an unofficial visit. I think Alabama feels good there. There's still some talk with Solomon Williams, look, we're at the stage now where there's guys, and it's not surprising, they're 48 hours away from signing or whatever it is. There's no need to really let anybody know now. They might have to tell the college coach to get their position, but Solomon Williams is a guy that's kind of been leaning elsewhere. Bama made a push. Bama was in good standings, and now I'm not really sure what's happening with it. I made some calls this morning. He's the guy that's probably going to surprise some people. I think he's given Alabama some good feedback at times. I think Texas has been involved. I mean, he's going to bounce around. He's a guy that could just surprise you. If you want a candidate of somebody that just surprises you and you didn't know he was even talking to that school, Solomon could be that guy. And, yeah, they brought in some transfer portal guys. And, Andrew and I have discussed this. We had it in the boardroom last night. They're going to kick the tires on these guys. But the NIL, the first go-round, is almost like the first round of the NFL draft. They're really getting some NIL offers. And, I think if they're worth it, it makes sense. But some schools are just desperate to fill their void going into next season. Bama's not going to be all in on that type of prospect, but they did have a good visit with LT Overton, former Aggie guys. Parents worked at Alabama, so kind of kicking the tires, figuring out what's going to happen there. But yeah, the first round of the portal has been interesting, but I think the second round, the third round, where you see these guys pop up in May, pop up in at the end of after the bowl games, I think there'll be more and more rounds of guys going in and out.
Yeah, it's something that goes lost on us. I think that the urgency seems to be right now because of mid-year to get these guys in your programs and get them going. But I think programs like Alabama, Andrew, that's where they have the luxury. They can be a little more selective and a little more choosy. And if they don't sort of go through this 10 items or less I think maybe there's Andrew. If they don't go through this particular round, they can come back around for a Jamison Williams from a couple of years ago in that later window.
And I think what people don't understand is, Alabama they're probably going to have to lose a couple guys too. There's going to be some guys that are going to enter the transfer portal probably after that first playoff game. We don't know who that's going to be just yet, but I do think there's going to be some options that are going to be out there still on the table, and Alabama's going to. I think a lot of the biggest question is, who are they going to sign this week? Who's going to get added? At different positions from the high school level. Do they really need to go after let's say an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman? Who else do they potentially need to really even to add depth? But who's out there that may not cost a fortune to potentially bring in? So I think they're going to focus a little bit more on it after that playoff game. But they had those three guys in this weekend. We'll see. I think Overton's probably the only one that's more realistic, but also somebody that I think they're still trying to make some decisions on right now.
Man, Lane must have found that NIL bag. That gas station fried chicken money must be good in Mississippi.
I think he sold them on winning next year. You know what I mean? You certainly can't take your whole defense in the portal and expect that to you can definitely win next year. And he's got probably, compared to the rest of the SEC schools, I would say a little bit easier of a schedule. But he's still got Georgia. I think he's got Texas. He's got guys on there. So if they're going to try to get in that 12-team deal, next year's a good deal. But, Travis, going back to the portal guys, like people in a rush, how many guys were committed portal-wise in the early signing period last year? I remember C.J. Dupree, but I feel like Amos, Key, Trez Marshall, weren't they all? They were all late guys, right? They were after.
I think Trez was. I thought Trez was early.
He could have been.
I know Dupree was early.
Dupree definitely was early. He was here for the bowl, but I know
think Amos was late.
Amos and
Key and
right?
Amos were late. They were
late.
Summer guys, right?
Yeah, I remember interviewing them in May.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. You don't. It's more than just one shot with that portal. I mean, you're going to get shot on shot. Another interesting thing that a college coach pointed out to me about the portal is, if you've got a guy wanting to go in the portal, you lie to him. You tell him, hey, stay here. And you not necessarily lie, but you say, stay here. And, we're going to do this and we're going to sign that for next year. Well, when they go through the spring game, some of them are going to realize maybe this isn't where I wanted to go. I gave you another chance. I do need to get out of here. And they're going to bounce. So we're going to see that. And that's, the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. And in the case, sometimes it's the same player, like with Pritchard. Pritchard hit the portal, threatened to hit the portal, came right back out of the portal.
Pritchard was kind of like Elijah Pritchett was kind of like that Simpsons gif where the old man comes into the restaurant, sees Bart, puts his hat down, puts it back on, and walks back out the door. Yeah, that was Elijah in the portal. But,
yeah, exactly.
That didn't take long, but it's a good flip around. But the portal,
it was. I'll tell you what, it was interesting seeing some people who seemed kind of confident in Elijah Pritchett in the first 10 minutes of him entering the portal, that he was going to go to their school. So he quickly.
Those same people are confident about everybody that goes in the portal often. You know what I mean? The old eye emoji on Twitter. Ooh, and then we told you if we got him. And then if they don't get them, they're like, oh, I was just saying.
So, guys, going into Wednesday, if I asked both of you, the most likely flip from another program or another commitment list to Alabama's on Wednesday, who would that guy be for each of you?
Go on, Tim.
I need the Jeopardy theme song here.
I would go percentage-wise. I think Jaden Ball, I guess if you count him, is probably the best chance. I don't think for sure that he's coming. I can't think of many that are committed right now. You got Houston. You got Ball.
Riley.
Kevin Riley. Yeah, I would – that's a tough one between the running backs because that thing is literally so fluid. I'd probably go with Riley. I mean, I'm gonna go there. It's a tough one. I really don't have a great answer for that. It's a tough one right now. It very well could be somebody we're not even talking about. Don't forget, we had that year. It was JoJo Earl, Keanu Coates. Yeah, I mean those were late. Now we had known the whole time they were messing with them. They chose other schools, and then Alabama goes and circles back and makes a push for them. So there could be some Alabama staff's going to turn over every rock.
Stealthily.
Yeah,
I
they're going to
guess.
turn over, and sometimes they'll do it so in your face you don't even believe it. It's almost like they tell you and you don't believe them, and then they still do it. So I would go probably with Riley because he's a hometown kid, but it's a tough one for me to choose that right now.
Perry Thompson.
Ooh.
I'm just kidding. I wanted to get Auburn fans riled up this morning.
All right,
I
got the timestamp on that. I can clip that right
out. I know they're watching the show. So
Andrew Bone says
they stay mad.
No, Perry would not be my pick. I'd probably have to go with Riley. I mean, just local kid. I mean, I know, we want to probably be different here and say somebody else, but Riley being a Tuscaloosa kid, obviously Alabama has been pushing hard for him for a long time. Miami's pushing hard for some other running backs right now who they feel like they've got a chance to land. We'll see what happens on Wednesday, but I'll probably lean Riley at this time. But Edric Houston, very much in play for Alabama, I think.
The one thing about this time of year is they've started. It starts on Twitter, it starts on social. All these surprises Bama's going to get. One year is just epically. Remember the dominoes were falling. Tua was coming back. Waddle was coming back. All the 5 first-round picks were. They were look at what they got back, and it was disappointing. They had Najee come back, Smitty come back. People were actually disappointed. Well, recruiting does that. I mean, at this stage, worst case scenario, you get the guys that you were favored to get. You hold on to the guys that you've got, and you've had a really good class. You're in the college football playoffs. You're with the top 3 class, and you get those guys. Again, all surprises aren't good surprises. I mean, it's Alabama's avoided that for the most part on signing day. But, if they do get a surprise, you just look at it as a little treat. Maybe you're Ralphie and you see that BB gun and Christmas Story hidden behind the tree when everybody else is fast asleep. So I wouldn't expect huge surprises, but that's usually when they happen.
I guess it's really an impossible sort of task, even this close to National Signing Day. But we're getting a question here in the roundtable thread. For you guys, thoughts on where this class ultimately finishes in the rankings? Again, and not knowing what maybe some other schools are going to do here down the stretch, but you're feeling right now about this class in terms of team rankings, top 3, top 4, top 5, top 2?
Well, I mean, you're looking at the rankings. Georgia's got a pretty decent lead up there. They got 28 commitments. Ohio State has 22, Bama 21, Florida State 23. Georgia's going to lose more than likely. The quarterback, Raiola, whatever his name is, the kid that's at Buford. Bad luck at Buford for Georgia if that happens again. I would say top 3 for Alabama, 20 commitments, really getting 3 more, probably keeping in that top 3 group. Obviously, depends on what Florida State and Texas do. They've got some guys they could win. Texas having a good class. I think it's better than the 6th-ranked class if you just look at overall their top-end guys. Florida is a team that's 5th and seems to be trending the wrong direction with a lot of guys. I would say top 3. Obviously one thing can flip it. You flip a Edric Houston and you're chasing Ohio State at 2. That could be the difference. We saw that with who was the wide receiver that flipped the Alabama LSU class that year? Was committed to LSU, wide receiver flipped to Alabama. While back.
Kenny Bell.
Kenny Bell flipped the actual recruiting rankings. So good call, Andrew. So that could be the case. But I got him in the top 3 comfortably.
Trash pile. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I actually think top 2. I think with the guys that they have a chance to add over the course of the next few days, because you've got some 4-star guys, you got top 100 guys, you potentially have a 5-star guy that you can add, and then you look at some other schools who they could possibly lose. I mean, you think about Ohio State. If they lose Edric Houston, that would be obviously a benefit to Alabama, I think. I don't know if it's going to be Clemson, but if he did decide to flip, I think they would have a great chance to chase that number 1 class once again. There's some 4 stars that are in there. Kevin Riley flips from Miami to Alabama. That certainly would help as well. But everybody was talking about how this class wasn't going to be on the level of some other classes, and they do that every year. I mean, it's every single year we talk about how this class isn't going to be on the same level. Well, last year was probably the highest ranked class in the Nick Saban era. So I don't know. Now you're having to compare everything to last year's class, but this year is I think they're really excited. You got the number 1 quarterback, you got the number 1 tight end, you got the number 1 athlete, you have the number 1 interior offensive lineman, and then you've got a lot of other really good players throughout the class. So I think Alabama fans should be extremely excited about this group. When you pair them with last year's class, it's absolutely outstanding.
Let me tell you why they should be happy as Alabama fans, because y'all gripe every year about the tight end position. Every friggin' year, it's the tight end position, and they have got literally yin and yang, Tom and Jerry, an absolute dynamic duo of Caleb Oden, who's going to be a guy that could stretch, flex, line up wherever. They've got Jay Lindsey, who's a nasty, mean, and I say that in the most positive way ever, football player who likes to fisticuffs. He likes to wrestle. He likes to block. He likes the physicality of it. But he's also a receiving guy. So you got an inline guy, you got a flex guy, and all that stuff. And another thing is, we told y'all last year this was going to be a smaller class. I mean, it was going to be a smaller class because of the numbers we're going to dictate it, but really also because it's not a great 2024 class. There's no college coach in this country that I'm aware of that thinks 24 is better than 23 or 25 or is good. It's not as good of a class. So you don't want to waste scholarships because, again, it's, those things, if you sign a guy you don't think can contribute, that's a check you got to cash. That's a check that's how you're going to end up having to cut 25 people in the portal to get where you're going. So we knew it would be a smaller class, and the smaller class limits how high a class can be ranked. Again, Georgia has 28 commitments. Bama has 21. So that's the comparison right there. And that's usually the difference between the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 class.
Trash Pile here in our YouTube comments wants to know, what's the most important factor that results in a player flipping a commitment? And I'm going to guess there's a wide variety of things that can go into that, Andrew.
Absolutely. Obviously, NIL plays a major role into those decisions. People have change of hearts. I mean, people decide they want to stay a little bit closer to home. People decide they want to get far away from home. There may be a situation where you have a family member who's sick. I mean, there's just a wide variety. A lot of times it comes down to which coach you want to play for. Is this position coach or this offense coordinator going to stay here? I would hope for the most part kids are making decisions based on who the head coach is, because if you're going to a successful program, a lot of those assistant coaches aren't going to be there, 2 or 3 years. They're going to be gone. They're going to get poached. But there's a lot that goes into it. But we know that NIL plays a major factor in a lot of decisions these days. So that's certainly something that we look at.
I also think that you could factor in when you look at some of these early commitments. So a kid that's usually has committed somewhat early in the summer or whatever. He hasn't always experienced everything he can experience from a game atmosphere. Again, Jameer Grinsley, go back to him. He never went to a Florida game. Travis probably right. It probably helped Florida to some degree, but he never even got to go on campus. He got to experience. So you commit early, you don't really get in. And I'll tell you another thing that factors in is it's almost like when you're married, you probably don't bring her flowers as much as you did anymore. But when you're trying to, trying to date her, you probably brought her flowers all the time. Well, when you're committed, you probably just have a regular schedule. You talk to them, right? And if you're trying to flip that commitment, you send 7 coaches or whatever to his house. You go watch his basketball game. You write him birthday letters, or you do cringy stuff like have the staff sing him happy birthday and put it on social media. You do all that kind of stuff. It's just a different relationships. And some kids like that attention and need that attention. At the end of the day, they are. I mean, I know a lot of these guys are just massively sized, but they're still kids, and that can affect them as well. But I agree with Andrew. If you're not picking for location, education, and for the head coach, to me, you're not doing it right.
Last question we'll take on this installment of Recruiting Roundup. Corey Lewis checking in here. Why doesn't Alabama recruit out of the state of Louisiana like it used to? for wide receivers and defensive linemen. Anything to that, guys?
I mean, they get really good. I don't think it's a matter of like state lines. And I know that's been the source of some contentment in the state of Alabama. I think they go with the best player. I don't think it matters. I don't think they're looking for the best player in Louisiana. I don't think they're looking for the best player in a certain state. Also, it comes down to recruiter, how often that area is flipped, what the talent level is, just a smorgasbord of things. I mean, a lot of that tends to ebb and flow. You'll see a pipeline, so to speak, in that state. You saw the Miami area hit hard by Alabama, and then it kind of waned off. And of course, that factored in Mario Cristobal was recruiting Miami for Alabama. So I think it just comes down to a lot of things. But I don't think they say, hey, let's go find the best player in this state outside of the state of Alabama. They definitely don't want to miss a guy here.
Andrew, as we get out of here, I want both of you guys to give us that one memorable story in the lead up to a national signing day. One, I know there's plenty. I know it's hard to choose, but with everything that can go on in the final 48 hours before the ink hits the paper, you got one of those? I know Uncle Tim, story time, he'll have at least one for us. What about it? Give us that one. That one.
I mean, there's been a ton. I think, so I'll have to say two that I always remember really well.
Cheating. That's cheating, but go ahead.
I know you can have two. It's okay.
You'll take my two.
No,
well, he did two. He knew I was coming with one of these.
Neither one of you will have mine. I promise you that.
I do think that I was sitting there at Drake Kirkpatrick's announcement, and watching him and Kendall Kelly announce their commitments to Alabama, and I remember looking down at my phone. The announcement of Trent Richardson was about to happen, and a lot of people were nervous that he was going to flip and go to Florida or potentially go to LSU. His brother was playing in Louisiana, so there was a connection there. Urban Meyer was really trying to flip Trent away from Alabama, and Trent told me this years later. He said that he called Urban Meyer on his way to his announcement, and if Urban Meyer would have answered the phone, he said there was no way I would have been able to tell him no. That he goes, I just had such a close relationship with Urban. He goes, he didn't answer the phone. He goes, when he didn't answer the phone, I just turned my phone off. So Urban could have called him right back, and maybe he was in a meeting or in the bathroom or something, didn't see his phone, and didn't, just turned his phone off, went to the announcement, and committed to or announced that he was sticking with Alabama. Of course, DJ Fluker and AJ McCarron were also at that announcement watching him. But being at Dre's announcement that day and now seeing Dre Kirkpatrick Jr. Signing with Alabama, pretty crazy. And then the second one I'll mention, I know there's several good ones, but Kenny Bell. Kenny Bell, we talked about him earlier when he flipped his commitment from LSU to Alabama back in that 2009 class. I was actually working at the Tuscaloosa News at the time, and I'd caught wind of Kenny Bell's flip. So we sent two guys down to his high school to the announcement. Nobody even at the high school understood why these two reporters from the Tuscaloosa News were at the announcement. And we called him Recruit X on the Tuscaloosa News site. People had no idea who it was going to be. Of course, that created a little bit of a firestorm because now every single year, who's Recruit X this year? Who's Recruit X? Just that one year.
Produce. Yeah.
So we got to produce every year. But I think Kenny Bell flip, as Tim mentioned, flipping LSU and Alabama for that number one recruiting class. That's something, well, I'll certainly always remember. But, as Tim knows, there's 100 stories that we remember around these signing periods.
I like to comment on the Trent story because this revisionist history for these guys as they get older, where, I was going to FSU and I go to this grocery store and I turn it on and on the radio is Sweet Home. How often do they play Yay Alabama and Sweet Home Alabama on these kids' radio stations? I've heard that 5 or 6 times that I was doing something in Sweet Home, Yay Alabama. I don't even know if they play Yay Alabama on your radio station, but there's always this, like he said, DJ Fluker and AJ McCarron were at that game knowing where Trent was going. So there's that whole thing's kind of funny to me. To me, signing day is always going to be small stuff, like not small stuff. Julio announcing on ESPN was massive. Rashawn Evans, that was an insane, wild moment. But for me, it's always Andre Smith, not signing day, but commitment wise, but pulling out the Bear Bryant hat. You know what I mean? That was not, he should have somehow got residuals from bringing it back. Because I don't really remember it outside of like grandparents wearing that until Andre came flying out of the hat. And I remember him putting the hat, Andrew was there, putting the hats on the table. And I'm kind of looking like, where's the Bama one? And he kind of looked up and grinned. And I was like, he knew he's going to do something. When a kid looks at you and grins before his announcement, if you're me and Andrew, you're like, oh, Lord, what? We knew where he was going. We thought we knew where he's going. He does that. And then he pops that hat on in the crowd. There was a pause, and then I think even neutral people were kind of like, "Wow," blown away with it. So, I'll obviously,
I think that was the first time.
First time we were, probably.
I think that's the first time we met.
Yeah, that sounds about right. This is a busy, pretty crowded. His parents were awesome. That was a good day. That's 3 big moments for Alabama too. So, like Andrew said, we could do an hour segment just recalling some of these, the almost commitments and flips, and then the actual commitments and flips.
I'll go with how much the coverage has changed through the years, and also kind of a life experience for myself back in, I guess it was early 1996. That's going back a ways, but
nice.
Covering recruiting at the time, and the wife is like a month away from delivering our first child, who is 27 now. So dating myself again. And I'm at a golf course doing a radio show, and the golf pro comes up and says, your wife's on the phone. It's important. She needs to talk to you, because there's no cell phone. I didn't have one anyway in 96. Maybe other people did. I go down to the pro shop, get on the phone, and I'm expecting her to say, I got to get to the hospital. I'm thinking she's going into labor early, something like that. And I jump on and I go, Heather, what's going on? Are you okay? She goes, yeah, I'm fine. She said, but Joaquin Fazell just committed to Michigan. Somebody had called our phone, I guess, at home. And she took the message and then relayed. Well, that's like Western Union recruiting coverage, isn't it?
Telegram.
Because I'm fine, but Joaquin Fazell just committed to Michigan. Okay.
That would have been nerve-wracking.
That's when I knew she was. That's when I truly knew she was a real one. That's when
the fact she called was scary enough. With that much pregnant. I mean, yeah.
Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun, and we're certainly going to have a lot more to cover right there at BamaOnline.com. We're planning to do. We're going to have a signing day type of show. I'm thinking that'll probably be Thursday. We're finalizing that, but we're going to have you covered right here on the YouTube channel. But absolutely, minute by minute at BamaOnline.com. You got the War Room up right now. You're going to want to check that out. Tim, Andrew, Joseph Hastings, second to none. There just aren't any better than these guys. So be sure to hang out with us right there at BOL. Anything else, guys, before we get out of here?
Nope. I mean, it's still a lot of recruiting left. We say that. I mean, it's the dead period, but it ain't the they died period. You know what I mean? They are calling kids, and they're working kids, and they're working mamas and daddies and coaches and mentors and handlers and mini agents and real agents. So there's a lot going on between now and actually pen to paper. I don't think they do that anymore, but they used to actually sign it.
I guess it's electronic now, everything.
I think they take a picture and send it in. Last I heard, Andrew, have you heard an update on that? Didn't they send in a visual or something?
It's pretty.
Whatever
easy.
Happened to fax cam? When that was.
People miss fax cam, girl. They now they get to see our faces instead. But
I actually promised in a thread the other day, Andrew didn't read, that Andrew would be wearing the fax cam skirt this year.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm doing.
Well, that's really going to help the views there, Tim.
Hey, that's going to push the promo for BamaOnline.com really well.
It'll be a fun day. There's already several guys already on campus. Julian Sang, Caleb Odom, Peyton Woodyard, a lot of
the early enrollees.
A lot of guys who are already participating in bowl practice. So you don't have to worry about those guys come signing day. But next few days will be really fun on BamaOnline.com. So come check us out.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's not over. We got the portal. We got the late period. You know,
got a little football game out in Pasadena coming up.
We got Bama guys that'll end up in the portal. You know what I mean? There's a lot. There's a that's the thing about making the playoffs. You get almost a 30-day reprieve from having to deal with the portal. Because hey, look, I'll be honest. If I work as hard as these guys, I would want to be. And I understand sometimes you got to, like Ja'Cory Brooks, you got to go get your spot. But I wouldn't want to miss out on the festivities and there's a lot of swag and stuff that comes with going to this. So I
want that windsuit. That's the thing I'd want, man. That Nike gear that they're getting. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. It truly is 365. It's 24/7, or at least it used to be, but it's on 3 for us at BamaOnline.com. So come hang out with us on the roundtable. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel right here, we hope you'll certainly do that. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like, and also turn on those notifications so you'll get this programming as it drops. For Tim Watts, Andrew Bone, Travis Reier, thanking you again for joining us right here for the Recruiting Roundup. And until next time, so long, everybody.